Diversion Board Authority. I call this meeting to order, the October 28th, 2021 meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I am here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Ebbinger.
Here.
Mr. Strand.
Present.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mrs. Shirley.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Salzwald.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Wonderful. We have a quorum. Thank you for being here. At the first item of action will be the approval of meeting minutes from September 23rd. Looking for a motion to amend, approve, or discuss, please.
Campbell moves to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Order of agenda number 3, looking for an amendment to the order of the agenda, please. We are wanting to remove item 10A, which is under other business.
So moved.
Staffing plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the approval of the order of agenda as amended? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Board members, you've had a chance to review your consent agenda. I presume if so, looking for a motion to approve, amend, or discuss, please.
So move approval.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Ebbinger.
Aye.
Mr. Strand.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Salzwald.
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you. The consent agenda is approved as presented. Item 4, which is on our regular agenda, the executive report. Mr. Paulson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've had a number of significant activities happen this last month. The most significant was financial close, which occurred on October 13th. So that really kind of finalizes the deal with the Red River Valley Alliance. And it also gave them the ability to start moving forward with some limited activities such as survey, obviously their mobilization, setting up their offices here in town. So we've been doing a lot of coordination with them. Jennifer's been working with their communications team. Chris and John and Martin and Paul have all been working with their engineering teams, working through a number of quality management plan discussions and the like. So that will continue throughout this next month as we continue to prepare for construction next year. Also, a number of key scheduling and permitting things with the Red River Valley Alliance have taken place. We did meet with the Office of the State Engineer, Water Resource Department in North Dakota, talk about the process of submittals of plans, make sure everyone's on the same page, so we streamline that with the most efficiency. Also, we did make a trip. Certain board members did come to Washington, D.C. at the end of September. It was a very successful trip. We had great meetings with federal delegations from both Minnesota and North Dakota, as well as the Corps of Engineers headquarters and the Assistant Secretary of the Army. So overall, I think we got alignment on the $180 million ask from the federal government for the Corps' work plan next year. That will allow them to continue and award the Red River Control Structure, as well as Southern Embankment Reach 2A, and mitigation programs for Drayton Dam and Drain 27. So we continue to await different options for the appropriation of those funds. I had talked to the board recently. There is an opportunity through the infrastructure bill that's being discussed right now in Congress. Mr. Chiller did express that he thought that bill could potentially pass within the next 2 weeks. So keep your eye on that. That would probably be our primary source of funding for the $180 million. If for whatever reason that doesn't come through, we still have another bite at the apple with the regular appropriation from Congress for the core work plan. So still get a number of irons in the fire on that end. We are working on, and we have been successful in setting up a meeting with OMB as well to talk about the program, where we're at, what we're going to be using the funding for. And really our idea is to make sure that Corps headquarters, ASA, and OMB all are in line and understand what the money will be used for. And then also some other planning efforts. We've been working on getting an onboarding plan together for Jody Smith as she starts in the new land director position next Monday. And so we obviously have a lot of work to get her in front of people, one-on-one meetings, a lot of relationship building. Eric's done a really good job of putting together an onboarding plan with me to make sure we get her up to speed as quick as possible. I would like her to meet all the board members at some point, and so we'll try to reach out and get something on your schedules so we can have some one-on-ones with Jody. And then we did conduct a director of finance interviews the week of October 18th. John and I are still kind of assessing the situation there, so we have not made an offer or a selection, but we'll continue to make some headway on that as well. And then a few ongoing coordination things. I kind of talk about this every month, but there's just a lot of work going on with utilities and township MOUs. Chris has really been devoting a lot of attention there when he's not working on the P3 items. Also, the settlement agreement commitments. We made some progress on a cemetery mitigation plan and policy, administrative policy, and we're moving forward with a few of those cemeteries. All of those in the effort to ensure that we're meeting our compliance with the settlement agreement overall. And then, of course, Chris is continuing to do great work on obtaining key permits and tracking down the remainder of the MOUs for the impacted townships on the program. So at this point, I guess I'll open up for questions. I would invite any board members to express their thoughts on the DC trip, and I thought it went well. So,
Committee members, any questions for our director? Any questions? So maybe some quick commentary from me regarding our adventure to DC. I think it was incredibly different than in the past, and I mean that in the most positive way I can possibly mean. We basically approached everyone saying greetings, hello, thank you for participating in our program in the past. And there was some presumption that we were coming asking for more money, and maybe you can touch on the first meeting with Senator Smith, but this was as easy as it gets. It's essentially, please keep your promise, and if you've got any questions for us or we can help you do your job better, let us know. And man, that was fun. Mr. Paulson.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Senator Smith at one point asked, how much extra we needed for the program, insinuating that we were significantly over budget and we were asking for more money. And when we informed her that we were in budget and we're just asking for what we've always anticipated needing, she was quite surprised. So
it was really fun. Any other visitors that want to talk about it? If not, we can move on to item 5. Item 5, General Counsel update. Mr. Shockley.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to end this.
Well, we're pretty busy people, John, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Diversion Board. The only thing I have for my update today is regarding the financial close on the P3 agreement. Following Mayor Mahoney's direction, I don't have any fancy flow charts or anything like that to go over, so I tried to reduce everything to one page just to kind of go over where we landed with the financial close. So we reached financial close with the RRVA team on October 13th. So congratulations to the authority and everybody involved in it. It's a major milestone. That means the contract is finalized, all of the financing is in place, and they are ready to proceed with design, construction, finance, operations, and maintenance of the project for the next 36 years. And so I thought what I would just do for your information is first I'll just touch upon some of the coordination and negotiation that we had with RRVA regarding the financing products that were utilized to realize some additional savings from their bid that they provided in June of this year. So Cass County, along with the efforts that we put in early on in the project to secure what's called a USDOT PABS allocation. Those are private activity bonds that can be utilized by a private party to issue tax-exempt bonds. Cass County authorized that. The Diversion Authority a number of years ago had sought after that allocation. We received that allocation and provided that to the developer. That was about $300 million of PABS allocation. Cass County approved the sale of that. The sale went very well. The results of that came in better than we had expected. That was in part due to market conditions, in part due to some great investor calls and interest in the project, which I participated in the investor calls, which was a really fascinating process and kind of fun to be part of. Very intense questioning about the project from large swath of the market and investment banks. So we benefited from interest in the project, a good market, and also the bonds were qualified as green bonds. And what green bonds means is that we received a third-party independent opinion that certified that the developer meets certain requirements that qualified it as a green developer, a green company. So they've committed to the reduction of their carbon footprint. They've committed to sustainable production and construction projects. They looked at the overall project being a flood protection project, being a resilience project, and determined that we met the green bond qualification. There is an interest in the market for any type of debt that's now green qualified, and so we benefited from that. The second item during the negotiations versus their original bid, originally they had bid in about $200 million of taxable muni bonds. We, through negotiations, allowed them to swap that out with a note with an insurance company called MetLife Insurance for $200 million. The advantage to that of doing a private placement note was that we had certainty around the interest rate, and the interest rate came in lower than what we expected. And then the final item that we worked with the developer on and negotiated out was, as part of their original bid, they have a revolving credit facility. I'll just get into that just briefly in a second as it relates to the milestone payments. The revolving credit facility allows them to draw money to pay for construction during the construction cycle. So as they get infrastructure in the ground, they'll apply for a milestone payment and repay that. So it's just constantly this revolving line of credit. That's in the amount of $650 million. We allowed them to use a hedging transaction, which any revolving credit facility has a floating interest rate. The hedging transaction allows you to lock in an interest rate, so a company takes on the risk that the interest goes up or goes, and the benefit that it goes down. And in exchange, you pay a set interest rate. And that was not part of their original bid. So through all of those efforts, it resulted in a significant savings in the availability payments to the Diversion Authority. And those efforts were sort of happening behind the scenes. You'll remember back on June 18th when we selected a preferred proposer, we started almost the day after with the financial team from RVA and the financial team from the Diversion Authority meeting. We had multiple meetings to go over these issues. And so I thought on the one-page sheet that I provided, I just basically go over what the engineer's estimate was, then what they submitted as their bid, and then what the final results were. So our engineer's estimate, as you'll see, we had a capital map payment of about $23 million per year. Recall that's the payments that start after substantial completion, pay back some of the developer's long-term debt, and it's part of financing the project. We had about $8 million a year in maintenance and operations through the diversion channel as part of the engineer's estimate, and then an engineer's estimate about $867 million of milestone payments. So when we received bids, we were very pleased by the bids. As you can see, they came back very close to the engineer's estimate. The capital map payment being the only one that was slightly different. That was about 25 million versus the original estimate about 24 million. The maintenance payment actually came in lower. That came in at 5,900,000, so just about 6 million. And then the milestone payments were almost right on the engineer's estimate at 870 million. So through the negotiations, the authority team determined that, the operations we weren't going to worry about because that came in below our estimate. And the milestone payments, we didn't want to reduce the milestone payments because the original financial plan back in January had the state bringing, 66.5 million in for the next decade. And now we have all of this large influx of cash from the state due to the North Dakota bonding bill. So we really didn't need cash up front. It really didn't help us out. And so what we looked at was how do we reduce the long-term debt impact to the project and ultimately to the taxpayers. So through those negotiations, we reduced the annual MAP payment for the capital side down to about 24 million. And so that's very close to what the engineer's estimate was, and that resulted in about $50 million of savings from the original RRVA bid. And so very productive. RVA was very good to work with. It was a really good process to work through. I can answer any questions. I promise I won't take too long, and I don't have any flow charts. So,
Any questions for Mr. Shockley? Mayor Mahoney.
John, MetroCog had this great recreational plan for the diversion. Can we have that back in now?
Well, anytime you want to add something into the project agreement, you have to negotiate with RRVA, and I'm sure that if you're willing to pay for it, you can add something back in. But I would caution that you don't have the competitive nature of the bid process anymore.
Any other questions for Mr. Shockley? Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Shockley, you also shared some very interesting information with us yesterday with regard to the original forecast of 2080 regarding the sales tax. Could you share that with the board?
Certainly. So originally in our finance plan, and this dates back to 2016, when we had proposed a sales tax that went to 2083. We were using, at that time, we had no idea if we were going to get a WIFIA loan. We had no idea what the interest rates were. So we used conservative assumptions that the authority would go out and issue traditional revenue bonds. And so the actual debt repayment was going out to just about 2080 under the original financial plan. Through the efforts of getting the WIFIA loan, which reduced our interest rate from a projected about 4%, 4.5%. It went down to, 2% with all sorts of really nice features, and we don't have as much temporary financing in place as we did before. The overall savings that we're deriving from the P3 portion of the project and some of the other financial tools that we've implemented, we've really reduced our debt window down to about 2056 is when we're looking at a final payoff. That can float a little bit for a year or two, but you think about the significant savings long-term to the taxpayers, and that's really where, when we talked about the WIFIA loan of the savings of $480 million, that's really where that savings come from because you're paying off your debt so much faster. And so I think the positive message is that I think one of the goals of the authority has always been to get the lowest cost of capital. I think we, check that box. We got the lowest cost of capital, and it resulted in savings for the taxpayer and gives us a lot more room to, absorb any unexpected changes as we go forward with construction.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Mr. Shockley, continue, or are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Rock and roll. Thank you, sir. Item 6 on our agenda, Terry from the U.S. Army Corps is not here. Chris Bakkegaard is going to give us an update.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm going to start and kind of take these a little out of order. If you can scroll down, I think I'll cover the design side first. And to avoid some duplication, we got a construction video coming up in a minute, and I'll maybe talk through some of the construction progress during that to avoid duplication. So if you look kind of from item 5 through 9, we're continuing to develop the next phases of the project with the Corps of Engineers. They're in the process of making a selection for the Red River structure. Those proposals went out on the street here in the middle of October, and they're planning to accept those towards the end of November, with again the goal of awarding that project in the first quarter of 2022. Again, that's dependent a little bit on the funding side of things, which we've talked about already. But other than that, I think we're finalizing our permits and our land acquisition, and we're in really good shape to kick off that last major structure for the Corps. Again, on the southern embankment side, we're continuing to design reaches 1 and 2 and finish those off. The Corps will be beginning to design reach 4 probably sometime in the beginning of next year. So we're making great progress continuing those designs as well. For items 8 and 9, Drain 27, that project, the plans are complete. We're just working on final land acquisition and final permitting for that. And then also with the Corps funding, they're still positioning that in where they want to do the bidding process for that as well, with those 3 items still being worked on. And then the Drain 27 mitigation project, or the Drayton Dam Mitigation project. Again, we've got final plans in hand. We're working on final permits. There's one landowner that we're still negotiating with, but otherwise that's all moving forward quite well as well. So with that, if there's any questions on the design side of the house, I'll answer those and then maybe reserve the construction ones until after we show the video here in a minute. So,
Any questions? Please proceed, sir.
thank you. So I think now, Mr. Chair, we can get the land update and we'll play that video at the end of that. So, sorry.
Okay, we will proceed on to Land Management. Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. We had a hearing last week with Cass County Commission for quick take eminent domain with several property owners. And after that process, there were additional funds that were deposited, and a new appraisal will now be ordered, and negotiations will continue with those landowners. So hopefully we can get that wrapped up, but unfortunately, that is the process that we have had to use with a few of them. We continue to work on acquiring property for the Drain 27 wetland restoration project, the Red River Control Structure, the Southern Embankment Reach 2A, the upstream structures and structure sites, the Drayton Dam replacement project, and then the environmental monitoring easements. We've acquired property interests on nearly 700 parcels, and we've completed acquisitions for the Diversion Channel SE1, I-29 roadways, the Wild Rice River control structures, and the Diversion inlet structure. Appraisals are being completed for the upstream structures now for the farmsteads and the rural residential homes. And then another really important phase 2 of the flowage easement valuation study is scheduled to be complete hopefully this year. I believe it will be, and there's been obviously a lot of interest from landowners in how that will end up. We will be having some public information meetings and of course individual meetings with landowners as well once that gets completed. But we've been working diligently now for quite a few years on getting this flowage easement valuations put in place. Farmland Management, the leases are being prepared for 2022, and that will transition now to the Red River Valley Alliance rather than handling it ourselves. And Eric, jump up there if I'm missing anything on this or you want to add anything. There's also been a lot of interest in the relocation benefits. I think this is one of the more difficult areas that we're working with. There will be an informational meeting for displaced property owners being planned for late November. And we're planning on having a focus group of farmers for the crop insurance that will eventually needed to be put in place, but hopefully never needed to be used. And then cemetery mitigation continues being developed with cemetery boards, and that's going along well. Eric, what would you like to add?
I think you did a great job, Mary. I don't know that I have any other details to add, but happy to help with any questions if there are.
This is a really busy group of staff that's working really diligently on an extremely difficult task. And, you know, I just want to thank the staff and especially thank the landowners that are working with us on resolving this. Not an easy one, and we're very mindful of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherling. Any questions for our land team? If not, are we ready to jump back to number 7, our public outreach, or should we jump on to finance?
Well, if
Or do you want to
I
continue?
may,
Please continue.
Generally, and I don't see it here, but usually we have Roger would like, if he'd like to add anything to the lands, and then have Kevin talk about the Minnesota side. I believe Roger's online.
Yes, Roger's here. Yeah, we had a meeting this morning and continue to negotiate with landowners through our land agents. And we just approved a couple this morning. We approved a couple counter offers, or I'm sorry, we counter offered on a property and then also accepted a property counter offer. And we just continue to approve RHDPs, which is replacement housing differential payments. We continue to see those come forward along with the relocation and moving costs. And we've approved several of those. We just keep working at it. And again, I would reiterate what Mary said. We just thank the landowners for working with us, and we just hope that we can get through this process with the least amount of pain. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Campbell, you have a couple comments, sir.
Yes, thank you. We have had 2 meetings of the MCC JPA, and in that process, we did approve an environmental monitoring easement action plan, which had updated easement language that was presented to us by some of our folks from down south who felt that could improve the ability to obtain some of these easements. In addition to that, we followed the Cass County Joint Water Resource District in adding a signing incentive for those easements. So we're hoping that will replace the expensive cost of legal actions down the road. So there's some things working on there that will help in the negotiations of those easements. We also approved four additional appraisals, and we approved 3 replacement housing differential payments. We also, in our meeting today, we approved a land agent task order amendment, which would allow us to have 72 additional property owners be assigned land agents for the process of moving forward with the Minnesota property. So there's a lot of good things going on our side. And in regards to the Red River control structure, there were 4 properties reported, and I reported earlier that we had acquired 2 of those. Since then, we have acquired a 3rd. And the action to complete the 4th one, I believe, was through a county judge this week, if I'm not mistaken. And we anticipate having those land rights needed for that property by next week. So from the Minnesota side, all of the lands will be acquired that are needed for the Corps to proceed with the Red River control structure. And I believe that's all I have.
Wonderful. Commissioner Sherling, anything else
No,
from your team?
That's it. Thank you.
Board members, any questions for land management? If not,
I do, Mr. Chair.
sorry, Commissioner Strand.
Just out of the blue, but who holds mineral rights of these properties when ownership changes?
I see a number of people scrambling, then pointing at each other.
I see
Just
a
so-
lawyer, I see a lawyer standing up.
Yep. Just for those of you playing the home game, that's what's going on here. Mr. Shockley,
Thank you, Mr.
who
Chair.
owns the gold and oil?
Well, it depends upon the, I'm going to give a very lawyerly answer.
I was
here.
going to say, that sounds just like a lawyer.
It depends upon the interest that you're acquiring. If it's a voluntary fee, simple purchase, generally that includes the mineral rights. And negotiations, some property owners can reserve the mineral rights, so it really depends. I don't know what the standard procedure has been. I don't believe we had many people that have reserved their mineral rights. I'm not sure there are any significant mineral rights that exist. I mean, there, legally there are, but I'm not sure that there are any real property or mineral rights that have any value. With a flowage easement, you normally wouldn't acquire mineral rights. There's a question about when you condemn somebody's property, if you take the mineral rights, it can't interfere with the underlying right that you're taking. So like for the channel, if you condemned a property, they probably couldn't show up with an oil rig and start drilling there. So it's a sort of a complex question, but we really haven't run into it much.
Yeah, I think that's probably the point that I would say is we really haven't had property owners expressing interest in retaining mineral rights. Of the 700 or so parcels that we've acquired, about 600 of those are owned in fee title, where we would have ownership of everything. And I don't recall any situation where somebody's retained a mineral right.
Thank you. Board members, any further questions? If not, Mr. Buckyard, are we safe to jump back to 7?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. Public Outreach Committee. We have obviously Roger and Jennifer to present, but Mr. Buckyard, do you want to lead off?
Chairman Peterson, this is Roger.
Roger, you have the com.
Yeah, thank you. Most of this is going to go to Jennifer, but we did have our meeting yesterday, and she explained, and actually first we got to meet some new people that are part of this project. We got to meet the team from RRVA. There was four people there, and we got to meet that team. And Jennifer has been interacting with those people for a while now, coming up with the key points for the draft communication and crisis plan, and intertwining that with this group. And also we got to, I was able to see Lily Kendall. She's a hire under Jennifer, and she's been working on our website design and redevelopment of that. I'd like to now pass it on to Jennifer.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Olson. So I'll share just a little bit about where he left off with the website redevelopment. I know we've been talking about this is something that we want to do for a little while now. We updated the homepage just so we have a little bit a better landing page for the site at the moment. But we've been looking at how we can redevelop that whole site. So we have a current base of information. We have better organization for search capabilities and just setting it up for success for the project going forward until the finalization of the project. So Lily shared some details about that yesterday. And what we've been working to do so far is just create a baseline of information that we have a sort of a path of how we're going to lay out the website, some ideas for content on the website. And then our goal is to take this information to Public Outreach Committee. We can share it with the board as well, So we have some substance to work off of so we can get some feedback and really start to shape what we want to see before we start building. So that was the goal of sharing that yesterday, and there's more to come on some meetings that we'll have one-on-ones with any of you who wish to provide some feedback and help us shape that as we go forward. Then I'd also like to introduce Amy Weiser Wilson. She joined us yesterday for public outreach as well. She is the replacement for PR for Good, Joanne Henry. Amy is local on the ground here, and I'll let her share a little bit about her background.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, board members. I am with Neon Loom Communications, and I'm excited to be on this project. My background is both in a lot of work with heavy equipment manufacturers and construction and mining as well. And I also served 20 years in the Army National Guard. So I was the PIO during flooding in 2009 through 2011. And so I'm really pleased to be on this side of the flood projects and the mitigation. So I'm happy to be here and be part of the team.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. And then the team that we introduced yesterday from RRVA, they are just part of a team that is working with that group. They're the local team on the ground here who's working through Flint Communications to help them partner with me on the P3 side of things. They also have a whole other team for RRVA that's working in other areas as well, but mainly we're syncing on that crisis and comms communications plan that we're ready to share with you most likely this week or beginning of next week for your review. And then I'll turn it over to Chris. We have some drone footage that we've been taking, just to update on the construction. Our goal is to have this footage on our YouTube channel every month. So we might not necessarily show it in these meetings every month, but you'll be able to see it there and we can track the progress of the construction as we go.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll just, as you talk through the video here, so we're getting most of our major core construction sites, just to kind of piggyback off of what Terry shared with us. This is the Wild Rice site. We're nearing 50% complete. You can see that they're very much above ground now and are working on some of the tan areas, are putting some of the pre-fill in just to help with settlement in the future for the future embankment that'll run across. So great progress being made there. This is the Red River site. This is the site we took borrow from for this summer for the I-29 project. Good news, that borrow material is completely hauled, so they'll be sealing this up for the winter. We'll also be then removing the haul route across the SE3 alignment and some of the pieces where we were crossing County Road 81. So again, that's pretty well sealed up for the winter. Here's the diversion inlet site. Again, this project is nearing about 80% complete. Again, they're working on the final walls in between the structures. They're in the process of manufacturing gates, and we'll be shipping those early part of next year. So that's making great progress as well. When you get to the I-29 project, another good report, the bypass now is fully open. So it's traffic is traveling on the bypass, 2 lanes each direction. So that's very much moving into what it'll be configured for the winter. And my understanding is IB is basically just sealing up the project and getting ready for the winter to prepare for next summer. Again, in Southern Embankment, Reach 1, the fill work is generally complete. They are again buttoning down for the winter, and we'll come back in next spring and finish off the topsoiling and vegetation plan with the intention that by mid to late summer that project will be complete and will be.
The
turned back
truth
to
is
us.
that Hollywood's elite.
Sorry about that. So anyway, so that's the rest of the core update. If you guys have any questions on the construction side of things, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
I'm curious about the training for Thor.
Yeah, I wish that was me, but it's not. So
I keep this shaved. I normally have that sort of a hairstyle, but I keep it shaved back to make myself look more professional. Diversion Authority members, any questions for our public outreach team? Mayor Mahoney.
So just as Chad opened his remarks about how well it went with Smith, Jennifer, it's a question for you. It's interesting, the P3 is going to have a public relations team. They're going to be putting out a lot of stuff about the P3 project. We have a team that helps us with our website, helps with what's happening. But as Chad said, when he went into Smith's office, we're over the major hurdles. John just did a great financial plan for us. Looks like we're on our way. 700 partials have been taken. Kevin was talking about good things going to Minnesota. Why would we be expanding our public relations team if things are going well? And I'm just curious why I know we're moving away from consultants and such, but if P3 has a group, we have a group, how many people do we need in PR? And it's kind of, Roger, question for you and Jennifer, basically.
So I can share that when I first started, we had at least 8 to 12 people working on communications. Currently, we have myself, Lily, and 2 part-time contractors. So we're at less than half of what we had before. And the reason is there's a transition time. So it's never that we were going to pull back and it just be the way it is now. We needed that transition time to figure out where we are in the project, what the needs are, so I can listen and understand where we're going from here going forward. And now that we have that understanding, we've identified where we need that support to carry us through the rest of the project.
Any further questions, authority members? Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. I'm wondering about your website, and maybe there's a difference. Well, I know there's a difference between PR and communication, and I would echo Mayor Mahoney's concerns about why do we need PR. I think we have a different focus now. But as far as communication goes, I have some wish lists on that website, and one of them would be floodplain maps. And how the project is going to impact. I would like to see a usable piece of website that a realtor, for example, or a homeowner could go to and say, if I buy that house, what's it look like now and what's it going to look like after the diversion is completed? That's solid information that I would like to be able to tell somebody that they could go to our website and easily find it. I'm sure there's a number of other items that would be useful information for people to be able to access. I think having a drone footage is certainly great to be able to document, the build of this. But, there's just, for 10 years now, we've been focused on convincing people we need the project. And now I'd like to focus on showing people some useful information.
Exactly, spot on, and that's exactly why we're looking at reworking the website into that useful information for where we are in the project going forward. But that's excellent feedback. I think we might have touched on that yesterday, but we do plan to develop some detailed maps, and I think it would be great to develop them so you can see that difference in the floodplain for homeowners or the community here for businesses in the area. But we'll take that feedback and plan to work with you on more on that as we develop. We do have some various groups that we've been looking at doing that more intricate development with us. So we've been interviewing different teams to see what their capabilities are. We want to make sure we provide some services like that have that enhanced capabilities on the website that we haven't seen before, but not make it too flashy or too messy to be able to traverse through the site. So we're trying to find that balance right now. And as we get closer to working that out, we'll circle back and see where we can share that information to get your feedback before we actually develop.
Well, and I think you could, if I may,
please,
contact the highway department for the county and, probably the city. We've got lots of resources right here. So I don't think you have to reinvent anything. It's just hard for the public. It's hard for me. I usually just call Mr. Benson. Yeah, that works pretty well, but there's got to be an easier way for everybody to get to that information. So
Absolutely.
like I said, I don't think it's difficult. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of different water groups have all that information, but I'd love to see it in one spot.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Chairman Peterson, this is Roger again.
Yes, sir,
and
Mr. Olson.
And I would like to comment on Commissioner Sherling's comments, and these are the type of things that I asked our committee to give feedback. Right now is the time that we're developing this website. Now is the time to talk and offer up things that you'd like to see on the website. And this is perfect, Commissioner Sherling. It's exactly what we would like to see. And I think Jennifer and Lily will be contacting, so I know she's contacting the outreach group, but also DA members. So be prepared to add your 2 cents so that we can get this developed and get this website usable for the general public to the best that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Something that I'll add to that is we already have also looked at how busy your schedules might be. So when we send some information to you, we'll give you the option of where you can either schedule a meeting and we can talk through it one-on-one, or Lily's creating a survey where you can submit some information and answer some various questions and submit your feedback that way, if that works as well. So just know you'll have those options.
Wonderful. Anything else, team? If not, we'll progress on to item 9, Finance. Mayor Dardis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met yesterday. I have a couple of milestone type of numbers that I'd like to share with you. Mr. Kent Costin, the City of Fargo, had to forward $16 million to the Bank of North Dakota. That's part of the compliance of our financial agreements. So there's been a major fund transfer there. Mr. Dodds came before us, and the land acquisition directives for Minnesota and North Dakota, those were executed this afternoon. $2.9 million to Minnesota and $48 million for North Dakota lands parcels. So, we're having a lot of activity late in the year. There is also a number of board approval contracts, nothing of really any consequence. With the one that we might want to share with the board is we entered into an agreement with NDSU, New Services Agreement. Mr. Paulson has done that about economic impact and economic development, and they'll be doing some work for us. And that's a contract of about $35,000. I would also like to compliment Paul Barthol from the Jacobson Company. We have been, the Finance Committee, certain members of the Finance Committee have been working with him, asking him for additional dashboards. Something where we don't have to look at pages and pages and pages of spreadsheets. And some of the instruments that he's come up with us, for example, are absolutely excellent. Right here I have a single page that has all 18 of our top vendors of who we've spent money with this year, starting with Jacobs and Houston Moore Group and Onstead Twitchell AE2S. And that simple, it tells us exactly how many dollars we've spent starting from the program budget in 2018 to where we're at now. So by continuing to ask for these type of instruments, I think every board member, whether they're on lands or they're public outreach or whatever, will have an instrument in their hand that will give them a truly working knowledge to understand, because as we continue through 2022, some of the dollars that we're going to be bringing forward to you are mind-boggling in my world anyway. The other thing is that I think that there's also an important part here that, as part of what Commissioner Peterson talked about as our trip to Washington, D.C., is that there is still significant funding that's needed for 2022 for a number of items, for a number of different construction bids. And I think that that's very important. To date, the federal investment in our project is $313 million. But we have also have a carryover this fall of $95 million, which is a deliberate carryover for the award of the Red River Control Structure. It's part of that in March of 2022, hopefully. So that's basically a summary of what we had in our meeting yesterday. Be happy to try and answer any questions. If I can't do it, I'll call on Paul, Joel, or John.
Board members, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, just for my sake, have we repaid that, I want to say $150 million of interim financing through Wells Fargo, or what's the status of that interim financing? We'd gone back twice to the city of Fargo, and I don't know where we're at now.
Mr. Shockley, please.
So the short answer is that the Wells Fargo credit facilities have been paid off in full. Earlier this year, as part of the financing, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District issued temporary refunding improvement bonds in the amount of $180 million. Part of that issuance was used to repay the Wells Fargo loans that were issued by Cass County and Fargo. The reason we had to do that was to clean up the liens on the sales tax as part of the overall funding. It was actually cost savings because it's a lower cost of capital, consistent with the financial plan. So certainly answer any questions about those issues. We have the ability with those bonds, they can be prepaid from, I think it's at the end of November. If we have additional funds coming in from the state, we wanted to have maximum flexibility on our financial plan. If we had extra money coming in from the state, we can call them early. If not, they can sit out there. They have low interest rates. So,
thank you.
I have one last comment, and Mayor Mahoney raised a great question with regard to the green space or the Metro Cog plan and the like, and we'd all like to see 33 miles of continuous park along our diversion. I would like to suggest that moving forward at some point in time in 2022, we continue to do the analytics of where we're at with regard to funding, because we have the Red River Control Structure, we have the Dayton Dam, we have a number of those things that total about $180 million ahead of us. And so before we move forward or an MOU or anything like that, I would, again, by my nature, urge caution before we move forward at adding anything in.
Mayor Dardis, to that point real quick, I was spent a couple days in Salt Lake City on behalf of the Association of Counties, and I actually conveyed information back to Mr. Paulson and team regarding additional potential for funding far and beyond what we've talked about before, or maybe segregated or separate, maybe a better term or phrase than what we've talked about before. And again, who knows what's going to happen with the infrastructure bill in Washington, D.C., but there's a mountain of potential for things, and we check an awful lot of the boxes as required criteria to access these dollars. And we talked about that before, but there's a special swath coming through, potentially anyway, within the new infrastructure bill. So there's still resources out there, again, beyond what we've talked about in the past. Mayor Mahoney.
And I would echo that. I mean, beyond going to the West Fargo Park Board, I think that, when you think about federal funding, as you say, Chad, is in there for parks and bike trails and those types of things. So to Mayor Dardis's point, yes, we have to we're on point with our own budget, but if there's additional funding we can find that would enhance the project for recreational purposes, I think we need to look at it.
Mayor Dardis, anything further, sir? Any questions for our finance team? If not, item 10 is other business. We eliminated item 10A from our agenda, but that doesn't preclude us from having other business. Any other business, board members or diversion team? Lots of head shaking. Wonderful. With that, we have our next meeting, November 18th, 2021, item number 12.
Move to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for team members.